Hi there and welcome back to another video. Today I am doing a reading vlog that I'm calling the September sequels. So the main idea behind this is that there are two books coming out on September 23rd that I'm interested in reading, and those are We Love You Bunny by Mona Awad and Thief of Night by Holly Black. But in order to read those, I need to read the books that came first, which are Bunny by Mona Awad and Book of Night by Holly Black. So this video is going to have two parts. The first part is going to be me reading Book of Night and Bunny, and then the second part is going to be me reading We Love You Bunny and Thief of Night. Luckily for me, I was able to get Book of Night from the library. Unfortunately, Bunny is super tied up. I wasn't able to get it as audiobook, ebook, or the physical version, so everybody's really into Bunny right now. I'm hoping that it will come available to me at some point, but if not, I will maybe have to go buy a copy. I usually prefer not to buy books, especially since I have so many physical books that I haven't read yet, but in some situations like this, I will give myself a little bit of a pass. But anyway, I got Book of Night from the library. I was fortunate enough to get Thief of Night as an ARC that I can read on my e-reader. And then as for Bunny and We Love You Bunny, I'm just gonna cross my fingers and hope that I can get those from the library. And if I can't, then I'm gonna go ahead and buy a copy. So we'll start by jumping into Book of Night, and I'm just gonna go ahead and read the inside cover for you. Charlie Hall has never found a lock she couldn't pick, a book she couldn't steal, or a bad decision she wouldn't make. She spent half her life working for Glomus, magicians who manipulate shadows to peer into locked rooms, strangle people in their beds, or worse. Glomus guard their secrets greedily, creating an underground economy of grimoires. And to rob their fellow magicians, they need Charlie Hall. Now, she's trying to distance herself from her past mistakes, but bartending at a local dive, she's still entirely too close to the corrupt underbelly of the Berkshires. Not to mention that her sister, Posey, is desperate for magic, and that Charlie's shadowless and possibly soulless boyfriend, Vince, has been hiding things from her. When a terrible figure from her past returns, Charlie descends into a maelstrom of murder and lies. Determined to survive, she's up against a cast of doppelgangers, mercurial billionaires, Glomus, and the people she loves best in the world, all trying to steal a secret that will give them a vast and terrible power. So yeah, it sounds like this is gonna have a lot to do with shadow magic, which I feel like is kind of a big deal right now in fantasy spaces. I am definitely reading a lot more fantasy like recently than I have probably in the past couple of years, but I'm not hating it. So let's dive right into Book of Night by Holly Black. Okay, so I'm back and I have an update on Book of Night. I ended up liking this one a lot more than I thought I was going to. I just did like a dark academia reading vlog. For that, I read Ninth House, which I feel like our main character in this one, Charlie, is a lot like the main character in Ninth House, Galaxy or Alex. I really like this one. I'm gonna give this one 4 stars. Charlie is kind of your common criminal. She does like pickpocketing, she does thievery, except she used to. At the start of the book, she's really trying to like keep her nose clean. She really cares about her sister and wants to like take care of her and help put her sister through college. So she ends up sliding backwards a little bit back into kind of the world of crime. And this literally happens within the first like 10 pages. So I don't feel that that's a spoiler. Throughout this book, we see her kind of dealing with like her experiences as someone who does these things for a living, her kind of returning to some of the stuff from her past, specifically like the stuff that got her into crime and like doing cons, and then also some like characters from the past. And then we see her relationship with her boyfriend Vince, who seems to be like a very simple guy but has some secrets. This book is all about shadow magic, so people can have shadows. The magic system is that you can like use your shadow to kind of like do stuff for you, and in order to do that you have to have what's called like a quickened shadow. Like your shadow has to kind of start to separate from you, but it's not always a good thing because you don't want it to separate too much. You don't want it to become its own entity. Charlie just has to kind of navigate this world and try and like solve some mysteries while looking out for her sister and also dealing with her relationship with Vince. This is a clear spoiler warning. I'm gonna go go a little bit more in depth into Book of Night, talk about some stuff that could spoil you if you don't want to know that much. So you can go ahead and skip to this timestamp here if you don't want to hear any spoilers for Book of Night. Okay, so the big plot twist in Book of Night is that Charlie's boyfriend Vince turns out to be a shadow himself. We kind of see Charlie's sister Posey like not really liking him and kind of making some assumptions about him. People can be shadowless when their shadows are like taken from them or if they decide to give them away. But Posey is constantly arguing there's just something a little bit off about Vince. And that thing that is off turns out to be that he is the shadow of this guy who died. When the guy died, he kind of pushed all of his life force into his shadow. And so Vince ended up like waking up and just kind of being his own person and having to learn how to be human essentially. Vince was the shadow to a guy named Edmund, and Edmund didn't just die. He was murdered by his grandfather, who is really trying to like cover stuff up. This grandfather is also related to Charlie's past because when she was a kid, she had not like a stepfather, but just like a guy that her mom dated who got her into the world of like conning and was like, you're a natural, like you should definitely do this kind of stuff. And when he tried to do a con at this guy Lionel's house, they ended up killing him. The only reason Charlie was able to get out essentially is because Vince happened to be there at the time being called Red as Edmund's shadow and kind of led her out of the house and protected her. Although she doesn't find that out until much later in the book. But there is this book inside the book that Charlie's trying to get her hands on because a bunch of people are like scheming and trying to get it. The book is supposed to have details on how a shadow could like separate from their person and become their own thing. And the kind of big reveal at the end is that Vince isn't a guy and is just like a shadow that's gained like human form. And my favorite part of this book actually comes at the end when Charlie pulls a fast one and we have kind of the classic like heist situation going on. Lionel approaches her near the middle of the book and is like, I need you to try and steal this book for me, but she eventually finds out that he's had the book the whole time. And so during this big party where he's gonna be admitted to like the leadership of like the magic society, she breaks into the vault, gets the book out of the vault and brings it to him and kind of does it like in the middle of the party and is like, here's the book you asked me to steal. I had to get it from your own vault because you had it this whole time, which everybody else is surprised about because as far as they know, this book is like missing and was stolen. And so Lionel is like, there's no way you got into my vault. Like you brought this from somewhere else. Like you're lying. And so Charlie is like, well, let me prove to everybody here that I did break into your vault. So they all go in. There's like a secret room with like a sliding bookshelf and all this stuff. And she goes into like put in the code for the vault. And when she tries to get into the vault, Lionel kind of sneakily sets off an alarm like from his phone or something. And then Charlie is like, okay, you did that. Like, let's show everybody you did that. And up to this point, we think like, okay, he's gonna win. He's gonna like get the better of her here. Charlie says, okay, well then open the safe and prove that you're not the one who set the alarm off just now. So Lionel, feeling all smug, like he's really done something, goes to open the safe and he opens it and the other people in the magic like leadership are like, oh, like we're sorry we ever doubted you. But then one of them spots something that Charlie left behind in the safe to prove that she had been in there. So I'm gonna read from that scene now just because I love it so much. We're sorry for doubting you, Malik said to Salt, but you understand we had to. Wait, Serene said, reaching past him. I know that book. And from the safe, she took out Night Singh's notebook, papers detailing Salt's crimes in his own hand shoved hastily back into the leather cover, edges sticking out, right where Charlie had left it when she'd taken the Liber Noctum. Salt began, but no words came out. Charlie had known the way to trap Salt since the day she'd spent with him. She'd thought it then, idly, not realizing how much it would matter. Let him dominate. Let him win. He'd be so certain he belonged on top that he'd never guess he was being drawn into a trap. He'd honestly believe that she gave him all that time while she futzed around with the first lock for no goddamn reason. He'd honestly believe that she could crack a safe but not be able to guess he had a security app on his phone. Miss Hall must have put it there, whatever it is, Salt said finally, recovering enough to realize he had to pin the appearance of this book on someone else immediately. Lionel Salt was a planner. Charlie was sure he'd planned for being confronted with any number of his crimes. He'd be able to explain a lot of true things, but no one could plan for planted evidence. I thought I couldn't get into your safe, Charlie reminded him. Isn't that what you were trying to prove? Which is it? Did you hide the Liber Noctum in there and I stole it while putting something else in? Or did I lie about the Liber Noctum and you're lying now? So I really loved that scene. It was just like a lot of fun to read through this whole like cat and mouse back and forth type of thing. Another kind of side plot is that there's this woman, Adeline, who really wants to kind of be in control of Vince or Red. And at the very end of the book, she is going to be punished for her crimes by being kind of connected to him. They're going to have to hunt blights together, which is a role called the Hierophant. Obviously, Charlie really doesn't want this to happen because she wants Vince to have his freedom. So the best thing she can kind of come up with to avoid this is for her to take the punishment instead. The book ends with a cliffhanger, which is Red is attached to her. When Vince comes to, he no longer remembers her and just thinks of her as like yet another person who's trying to control him. So a really strong cliffhanger for this one. I can't wait to read Thief of Night. I'm really excited to get into it. And again, I gave this one a 4-star rating because I really enjoyed it and I'd recommend it to a friend, but I probably wouldn't read it again. And while I'm very excited to get to Thief of Night and I actually have it on my Kindle, I won't be reading that one next. Instead, I'm going to be reading Bunny by Mona Awad. I'm kind of interested in picking up the physical book, so I don't know, I might run out to the bookstore and see if I can get my hands on a copy. I was lucky enough to get the audiobook for Bunny from the library and I actually have it on Libby now. So I'm gonna go ahead and start reading this one. From what I understand, it takes place at an MFA program. I've actually applied to a couple of MFA programs in writing in the past, so I'm very interested to see what happens in this one. And I also think that some people were describing Bunny as kind of like a dark academia book, which is really just my luck. After doing a whole dark academia reading vlog, of course, I would like happen to accidentally plan to read another one without realizing it. But anyway, yeah, let's get into Bunny and I will check back in once I've gotten a little ways into that one. Okay, hi. I'm back. The last time that I checked in on this, I was getting ready to read Bunny, and it's been a hot minute, and I've actually finished all of the rest of the books that go in this reading vlog. So I had like one day where I went out to a bunch of bookshops and I was trying to find a physical copy of Bunny to have for this video. Since I only got that one as an audiobook from the library and I couldn't get the physical copy from the library and I couldn't get a copy on my e-reader, I have a Kindle and I've really been trying not to buy like Kindle books from Amazon, which means the only way I'm able to get them on my Kindle is through the library, which I was able to do with We Love You Bunny, but Bunny itself was not available. As I talk, I'm just gonna show you some of the clips of what I've been up to and everything. I know a reading vlog is like supposed to be like read and then atmosphere and then read and then atmosphere, but if I'm honest, sometimes I get so caught up in what I'm reading, I forget to like film little clips in between. So I read Bunny without text. Basically, I usually try to have at least some version of text, like whether that's through like the Kindle or whether that's through like having the physical book from the library or whatever. But try as I might, I was not able to get my hands on Bunny. We went to 4 bookstores and not a single one of them had Bunny. They all had We Love You Bunny, but they did not have Bunny. Bunny was definitely an interesting read. I ended up giving it 3 stars, which on my rating scale is just like, I enjoyed it, it was fine. One thing I really appreciated about Bunny is that I haven't read, I think it's called Flowers for Algernon? I haven't read that book, but I've heard that the narration changes. The character goes through some kind of like mental changes. In that book, people have told me you can tell like kind of an intelligence level change for that character. And I think that Bunny employs kind of a similar technique where we have a main character who is going through very different periods of her life. And I thought that the prose did a really good job of showing her when she's kind of interacting with the bunnies versus her when she's not. I think that the actual prose itself has a very clear like delineation, and there's actually a scene where she's kind of straddling the 2 worlds and we can see kind of the like tug of war between herself and who she is when she's talking to the bunnies, and I thought that was very interesting. Bunny, it takes place at like a very elite kind of like kooky experimental MFA program at a fictional school. There is a lot of like bunny and rabbit theme, as you would obviously expect. There's essentially like kind of a clique of popular and rich girls on campus who exclude one of the students, and Bunny is the story of what happens when this student is finally kind of brought into the fold. There is a lot of metaphor going on in this book about like drafts and writing and creation itself, and I guess one of the reasons why this didn't end up being a 4 or 5-star read for me is that I felt like some of the metaphors ended up getting a little bit muddled. I don't want to spoil too much for anybody who wants to read it and doesn't want to be spoiled about the specifics of this one, but essentially there were a lot of metaphors around the idea of killing your darlings and things like that, and what's required for creation, what it means to be a writer. I think another thing about this book that did kind of, I wouldn't say that it's necessarily like an objective minus towards Bunny, but it's just something that I didn't really love, and it was that our main character showed a big lack of agency. Of most of the time she's just kind of doing whatever happens to her, and there are other moments where there's like a really intense request for suspension of disbelief from us as readers that a lot of times I was not willing to give. So I don't know, if you read it, maybe you'll notice some of those moments too, but that was just kind of my general feeling about the thing. Anyway, let's move on to arguably the more interesting reads in this reading vlog, which were We Love You Bunny and Thief of Night. So Thief of Night is the sequel to Book of Night, and I actually read that one on my Kindle as an e-arc. It's kind of interesting because I enjoyed Book of Night more than I enjoyed Thief of Night, and I enjoyed We Love You Bunny more than I enjoyed Bunny. Kind of a mouthful when these titles are so similar, but Thief of Night is the continuation of Book of Night, and it picks up with our main character tied to the shadow who no longer remembers her. I was really excited about the premise for this one because I just thought it was a really interesting kind of situation for them. It's kind of an enemies to lovers, kind of a second chance romance between them, and I really liked the idea of our character being the one to like go off and fight these things. I gave Book of Night 4 stars and I gave Thief of Night 3 stars. And I think one reason for that is that the plot in Thief of Night felt very sequel-y to me, like very much like, okay, we've got these characters, we kind of need to figure out what to do with them, and just kind of giving them almost like a filler plot, I guess, if that makes sense. Although I did appreciate the romance between the shadow and the main character, and for the most part I liked the way that that tension was resolved between them, but I did end up liking, I thought Book of Night was a more whole, well-crafted narrative, whereas Thief of Night definitely had the flavor of something that was like coming after that book. And then finally, the last book that I'm going to talk to you about is We Love You Bunny, which is it's not actually it's kind of both a sequel and a prequel to Bunny. I am going to go a little bit more in depth with We Love You Bunny than I have with the other books so far. So this is a spoiler warning for you. If you do not want to be spoiled on We Love You Bunny, now is a good time to like click away, read it, and come back. This vlog in general, I think, is more for people who have also read these books and want to like chat about them. So anyway, if you've already read We Love You Bunny or you're not planning to read it and you don't care about being spoiled, let's go ahead. So real quick, let's do like a run through of what happens in Bunny. So in Bunny, the kind of thing that I wasn't spoiling earlier is that the bunnies, this clique of like rich popular girls, are able to create boys through kind of like a ritualistic process in which they all come together. They have to sacrifice a rabbit, which ends up exploding as part of this process, and then they make a boy. But the problem with the boys that they make is that they are pretty dumb usually. You can't really like ask them questions. Anytime they start to get like too stressed, they will also explode. And so at the end of Bunny, we see Sam, the main character, kind of pulling herself out of the clutches of this like cult essentially through the help of her best friend. At the end of this one, she finds out that her best friend, whom she's been like spending almost all of her time with, is also a creation that Sam did through like using a swan rather than using a bunny. And so at the end of that book, the bunnies kill her best friend and she comes in and she finds just like the corpse of a swan. And there's also another character who she makes out of a stag, who's like this really like handsome and charming guy who ends up seducing all of the bunnies in their own way. So he gets revenge on the bunnies and he dates the best friend, the swan, whom Sam is like obviously in love with but doesn't ever do anything about. All that to say that Bunny ends with the swan dead and also with Sam killing the stag guy. So We Love You Bunny opens up with the bunnies kind of addressing Sam and saying like, okay, the book you wrote about us, which I think is referencing what happens in Bunny, the details of Bunny itself. They're like, oh, the book you wrote about us got super famous and you're on this book tour and we have kidnapped you. So the narrative is told through multiple perspectives. We have the 4 girls. So the narrative goes from, we have Coraline, Kira, Else, and Vic. And it's essentially the story of how they like discovered that they could do this and how they ended up getting like tight. And I think one of the interesting things through like hearing their part of the story is that these girls aren't actually friends. They just do everything together and kind of pursue this common goal. And there's also a ton of gay, I don't even want to say undertones, because it's just a lot of like the girls being interested in each other and kind of the like highly affectionate and like covetous, the way that girls can like covet friendship between one another and like it being so special and all of these things. It's definitely aligned with like gay. It's definitely aligned with a certain kind of queerness. But the most enjoyable part of We Love You Bunny was not any of the narrative coming from the bunnies themselves. The most enjoyable part was the narrative that came from one of their creations, their first creation, Arius, because his like sequence of events combined with his like language and the way that he like writes things and tells things is hilarious. I would also say that for Bunny and We Love You Bunny, I think that it's really helpful to listen to the audiobooks because the narrator does such a good job of capturing the kind of like fanatical way that the bunnies talk. They're very like, okay bunny, like K bunny. And I think that listening to the audiobook, I don't know, it just brings a certain something extra to it. Arius's parts, which were my favorite parts in the book, are funny because of the combination of his kind of lack of understanding of the world and also this technique that the author uses where we see he puts smiley face, frowny face. I don't know why, but this genuinely had me like laughing out loud while I was reading it. And Arius's whole shtick is that he's created by the girls after they get some feedback from one of their creative writing professors. They're like pissed off at him, and so they like are jokingly and kind of not jokingly saying that they want to kill him. So when they make Arius, he has like one purpose and he knows it's to kill Alan. But when he escapes from the girls when they're holding him and gets out into the world, this becomes a problem because he isn't focused on just killing one Alan. Any Alan that he comes across, he has the like undeniable urge to kill. So the first time this happens is when he comes across a little boy who's like trick-or-treating, and he almost kills him until the mom comes along and frightens him away. And then Arius finds himself at a Halloween party at a frat house where a bunch of guys are all dressed up and partying. And when he comes in carrying his axe and wearing like a bunny mask, he is just kind of accepted. The people are like, oh, that's like weird, but we're at a Halloween party. So Arius ends up meeting this guy named Tyler, but he's dressed up with a raven on his shoulder in reference to The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe. When Arius hears this, he thinks that his name is Edgar Allan, and so he kills him. He cuts off his head with an axe. I was laughing so much. It was funny to me. And I think that I didn't exactly see also in Bunny itself. I thought the addition of this kind of like monster-esque character, which we see a lot of references to Frankenstein in this book as well, and which is surely like a parallel between Arius and the monster. But I just thought that his perspective was so funny. It was so interesting to me. That was the part that I enjoyed the most. Although I also did enjoy at the end of the book. And again, spoilers here. Like if you're planning to read it and you don't want to be spoiled, this will spoil you. But at the end of We Love You Bunny, we find out that the person that the bunnies have kidnapped to try and like get their revenge on is not Sam at all, but is a fake Sam that she made from a bunny. So they kidnapped that version of her, and she ends up getting away and taking this book that Arius has written in, presumably probably to publish it to go along with the first one. And other than the bunnies, everybody in this book seems to get a happy ending. Arius gets to return to being a bunny. Alan, the professor, doesn't actually get killed. And all around, it's kind of a good time. So I gave We Love You Bunny 4 stars. Yeah, I think that's pretty much everything I have to say about it. I think in the future in my reading vlogs, I'm going to try and do a better job of being able to like pick up the camera as I go. But for now, this is my September sequels. So as a quick run through, I read Book of Night, which I gave 4 stars, and then Thief of Night, which I gave 3 stars, and then I read Bunny, which I gave 3 stars, and We Love You Bunny, which I gave 4 stars. I was able to get Book of Night and We Love You Bunny through my local library. Thief of Night I got as an ARC, and Bunny I got as an audiobook through the library. So that just goes to show you that if you want to read these books, you may have to go on a waiting list for a while, but you should be able to get them from your local library. And if not, you can always try thrifting them or looking at a secondhand store. If none of those are interesting to you, I do have some links in the description to bookshop.org where you can purchase these books and I will earn a small commission to support my channel. Have you read any of these books? What did you think of them? Do you agree or disagree with my ratings and my opinions? And as always, thank you for watching.